Chapter 4. It was finally time to leave. Adam's heart pounded for some reason. There was no reason to be nervous. He already had the job, but he hated corporate buildings. They made him feel insignificant every time he stepped into one. He walked out the front door, waving to his roommates as he did so. Kendall was spread out on the futon, and Tori was playing World of Warcraft on the computer in a corner of the living room. The cold air chilled Adam again as he walked to his truck parked on the long lane that separated the two units of townhouses. He immediately turned on the heat. He'd had this beat-up '98 Chevy for 14 years, and it did nothing but cause him grief, but he still loved it. It had a standard transmission his grandfather had taught him to drive shortly before he passed away. Adam moved to Texas shortly after his father's death, leaving his mother in Georgia. Dad's death had been overwhelming for her, so much so that she suggested Adam live with her parents for a while. That decision didn't make much sense to him when he was 16, but at 35, he felt he understood. Mom had been extremely depressed and had found it very difficult to raise Adam on her own. The move was meant to be temporary, but he had gotten so used to living here, had made so many friends, that he didn't want to leave after he graduated high school. Mom understood. She pretty much had to, considering this was her idea in the first place. It had been difficult leaving his best friend, Ollie, however. They met as kids in the mid-'80s and had been inseparable. Adam chuckled. He hadn't thought of Ollie in a while. Now that he thought about it, he grew nostalgic for his life in the '90s. The bowling league he joined, the trips to the laundromat arcade with Ollie, karate lessons. But he also had great memories of his time here. Living with his grandparents had been a little difficult at first due to the fact they were so old. Adam suddenly shook himself. He was still sitting in front of the townhouse, and had been doing so for 5 minutes. He still had 2 hours until orientation, but he hated that he'd gotten so distracted. He grabbed a CD carrying case from behind his seat, pulled out the soundtrack to Underworld, and popped it into the player. It was a winter tradition to listen to this series' soundtracks. They brought back memories of simpler times. Whenever he listened to the first movie's soundtrack, he was automatically transported to 2003. That was the year Grandpa had given him this truck, taught him how to drive stick shift. Adam smiled as he put the truck in first gear and drove away from the townhouse.